Welcome, welcome to Proper Conversations. We're really pleased to welcome to the program, we'll just say right from my far left, we'll start right out, is America Hoffman, who is the son of Abbie Hoffman, and we want to talk about your dad and some of the things that are going on. And America, welcome very much to Conversations and to New York, right?
Thank you.
Coming in from California, by and large, yeah, right?
Pretty much.
And on my immediate left is the wife, co-organizer, and running mate of Abbie Hoffman, that being Joanna Lawrenson. And Joanna, welcome very much to Conversation.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here talking with you.
Well, I'm happy to talk to you both, and about Abbie, who was a grand fellow and so forth. And as you know, we knew him a little bit. A lot of people knew him a little bit. A lot of people knew him well. He was a major figure, of course. And we're talking now in November because I guess we're going to have another celebration of his birthday, which is the 30th. Is that his actual birthday?
The 30th of November is his actual birthday,
right.
1936.
And
after he died, his family and friends and I formed a foundation,
right,
which is mainly to preserve his archives.
Yeah.
And in celebrating every year his birthday, we raise money to preserve these archives,
right,
and to carry on his legacy with young activists that are working today.
Yeah, and trying to inspire some of them to pick up on the torch. Right?
Well, they're not too hard to inspire.
Yeah.
There's certainly a nucleus that is very interested and want to know and don't hear about. And what did he do? How did he do it? What were the tricks? How did you organize? How did you get all these different kinds of people together?
Right.
Different politics, with same interests, and he crossed all barriers. He wasn't just. He was an American organizer.
Yeah, he was.
He was a true American. I'm a New Yorker.
Yeah, I know. He was a true American, and he also, and you're sick of hearing it, America. I'll bet you, what are you, 23 now?
Yeah.
Is that? Yeah, you probably
I know what you're going to say.
You're going to sick of hearing, well, those were the good old days.
No, I'm not sick of that.
Right? No, in the 60s.
I thought you were going to say something else.
Oh, what did you think I was going to say? You tell me, what did you think I was going to say?
No, I thought you were going to say, I thought you were going to either ask me what it was like or that I look like him a lot or something.
No, I hadn't thought of that. I don't know. No. I was just saying, you probably heard about you're probably sick to death of hearing, you kids, let's say, I'm sorry, shouldn't use like you young people, young man, 23 years old, you're probably hearing about the spirit of Woodstock and the 60s and what was going on then, and that there was a sort of idealism.
Well, you're saying that most people think that there's apathy right now?
Yeah,
among
and
kids?
that there is among the Generation X, at least I hear, among some of the younger people, or in the society in general.
The job market
if you're thinking in terms of change, or you're thinking in terms of some sort of challenge to the people who are running the affairs of the state and the world and that sort of thing, there was a challenge to it that was abroad in the air. And it wasn't just in the United States, it was all over the world, in France and other people. There was something, as Bobby Dylan said, blowing in the wind, and there was an intuitively felt transformative idealism that was there.
But back then people were risking death with the Vietnam War, and there's no death, right now, a threat. I mean, to people
you don't think there is a threat?
Well, there are a lot of issues,
you don't
and
think
they're
there's
very
an existential threat? You don't think there's an existential threat
there is,
to
but
the human society, the human species?
That's harder to see. I mean, to see, at least. So that's one of the reasons. A lot of people say there's apathy, but there isn't. I mean, apathy for
Talk to me.
Okay. Well, I'd just say that now that Wilson was reelected in California, I think things are getting to the point where it might peak and build. I know a lot of people that were upset and had a lot of demonstrations about the fee increase for junior colleges.
Yeah.
And he's probably going to raise the fees. And I know a lot of people that are just barely making it through school right now.
Yeah, right.
And he's threatening our education, which is a big deal.
Also, you've got this, we were just speaking earlier, you've got this World Trade Organization. Have you heard of that? Have you watched it? The Uruguay round of GATT is being done now. And I mean, it's the largest thing that's ever been done in maybe 50 years in terms of setting a new agenda for spaceship Earth, as it were, as Bucky Fuller called it, and so a new agenda. And I mean, it's amazing. It's going through. It's tremendous implications in terms of separating out the well-to-do and the mass of the population.
What is this? I don't know about this already.
It'll be passed in December of 1994. I mean, these kind of things are going on. But that's likely to create an increasingly visible two-tiered society. It's very, very good bill for the multinational corporations and the military probably, and also for the financial institutions, world financial institutions and so forth. But it's probably going to be very bad for the working people within the world, and for the lesser advantaged people within this society. It's probably going to create you know, we used to have a fellow back in the 50s. We go back to the 50s. And if I don't mean to patronize you, but it's just you're younger, and so...
I don't feel patronized.
That's one of the ones that younger, older people get a chance to do, is talk a little bit, you know, about the old days and that kind of stuff and everything. We used to have a fellow back in the 50s. Back before the 60s, we had a guy named Charles Wilson, who was head of General Motors. And he used to say, what's good for General Motors is good for the United States.
I've heard that before. Yeah.
And now we're going to be able to have a saying where what's good for the Karatsu is good for you. I mean, it's that kind of thing that's coming through. But you don't, I mean, that there are these patterns that are developing that call for transformation. And in the 60s, there was a massive idealistic sort of a sense of the need for a change, all the way from ecological design prerogatives to political changes. So the war was there, and there were other things, but I don't seem to see it.
Too.
Yeah, at all levels, and it was sort of invigorating and exhilarating to be.
So you're saying you don't see this now? You don't see young people that are concerned at all?
Pardon?
You're saying you don't see young people that are concerned. You're saying that
not only young people. I think in general.
Or informed, basically.
In general, I don't think there's very much. I mean, I sense that there is not very much counter charge or counter or challenge to the general operation of things now.
Well, there's nothing
it.
as big as and as tangible as the Vietnam War, perhaps.
That's
right
true.
now.
That's true.
But having lived and worked with Abbie all through the 70s and the 80s, we were constantly working on issues that concerned. I mean, I can't say that the young people in the United States don't know about certain issues. They had their tuition problems, and they had apartheid.
Yeah, that's true.
Which they consistently were good on and worked with. And then they had their tuition problems, and then they have local problems, and then they have environmental problems. I mean, and I guess, again, they're draft problems, right?
Well, I don't know about the draft problems if they have that. You don't face the draft now.
No, it's only going to be. I don't think there'll ever really be. I think it's always going to be volunteer armies. I mean, you might disagree with me, but I think there's enough people that will volunteer right now.
Yeah.
But I'm more concerned with the fee hikes on my education. I can think of things that directly affect me. And I think a lot of people feel the same way.
Do you think people tend to think in terms of things that directly involve them? And if that is, perhaps that's appropriate, perhaps it's not, depends on your philosophy of the view. If that sort of self-centeredness, if that's the right term, or I use a loaded term, selfishness.
Right, but I don't think that selfishness is
narcissistic kind of concern with self, rather than would be like an altruistic kind of concern for the whole of the human family and so on. Do you think those two principles are in variance with one another or not?
No, I don't think the term selfish is such a bad word. I think it's a misused word. I think it's good to start from yourself to do well, and I mean, I think that education is really important. And if I'm fighting for my education, I'm fighting for everybody else's. I don't know. I think that it's good to be well educated.
Yeah, that's one of the things you have to try and...
What? Especially in engineering and science, and I have a blind optimism towards science and engineering, and I really want to push forward through that.
What
and I think that we should all be highly educated in terms of physics. So
I see.
I'm interested in electrical engineering. Electrical engineering.
And you've been at the University of California? You've been studying?
Right now I'm at the junior college level.
Yeah.
I'm getting all my physics and calculus behind me, which I'm most of the way there.
You like calculus?
Yeah.
Good Lord. Well, that is a change. That's good. Yeah, well, that's good. That's a real... You really enjoy the calculus, right? It's really exciting.
I like math,
abstract mathematics and that sort of thing. And you want to go into engineering?
Right.
And you understand computers.
Yeah.
You can work computers.
I used to be a computer technician for a company called Sybase.
And you feel like you sort of just grew up with that and so forth.
I think having a personal computer is helps. I mean, I used to sell them to lower income families at Price Club.
Yeah.
And I really feel that it's good for kids to have them around. I mean, I was selling them to black families that probably might not be able to afford a luxury like that if it wasn't a useful one, and I felt really solid behind it that if they're computer literate, their chances of a job are much greater.
Yeah, so. The chances of a job are. Let me ask you a question. They say that, they'll be talking about Mr. Reich. He's our Secretary of Labor, and he says the big thing is we have to get people to be high-skill, high-wage jobs that they're going to try and create and differentiate the world according to people who have these skills, supposedly, high-wage skills that makes it possible for them to get high wages. And then there's going to be a whole mass of people who are not going to be able to have those skills, particularly on a world scale.
Who will not be able to have them.
Unfortunately, according to Mr. Reich, are just going to be, in a certain sense, sinking to the bottom of the pile. And there's going to be a few people it's important that they do that. Do you think the skills that...
It's really sad. It's almost like craftsmen, the idea of that. I thought that everybody could become computer illiterate, but now they talk about computer gurus and like, oh, I know somebody who knows that, like it's a craft, like a locksmith or something like that. And I think that everybody should be well versed in that stuff. I mean, it makes me sad to think that it's a craft.
Yeah.
You know, because I think everything's so user friendly now that
you think
all you need to do is
friendly.
Yeah, I think things. But I might be kind of
no. Okay.
Cocky.
No. I'm just saying with the side to you, it's user friendly. To me, I'm having a heck of a time. You know,
yeah, me too.
Basically,
they tell me they explode, they get lost, or
but we shouldn't think that.
But younger kids have shorter attention spans. I mean, I'm part of the TV generation, and I think things are developed for people in my generation. And it might be faster. We have a different attention span, and we have a different way of seeing.
Theater they have now on Comedy Channel, but
well, that's true.
Things are moving fast.
But I think that people my age are a lot like me because I have a very short attention span.
And are you optimistic for the human prospect, or I saw these fellows?
Some things I'm a little worried about. I think that I'm optimistic, but I'm worried that everybody else isn't.
I mean, you know, you get movies like Slacker, and you get Generation X, and you get these young people who got change or leave or something. There's a movement. They think Social Security won't be there. Nothing's
a disassociated movement where we don't know.
The boomers are taking it all. The boomers are taking. There's nothing going to be left for the young. There's no places open for them. The expert systems and so forth are going to take over in the manufacturing process. The pattern that was agribusiness is going to take over in manufacturing and services, and people are just going to, there's not going to be any economic opportunity, there's going to be no jobs, you can get a degree, there's no job, and there's tremendous disappointment and sad prospect.
Everybody feels that way.
By the young people. The young people, almost universally.
A lot of people don't believe a lot of people don't believe we're going to ever collect Social Security. A lot of people my age think it's a total myth. I have an open mind about it. I don't quite know. I'd rather invest in an IRA if I was starting, because I think that you have to watch yourself.
So you keep track of that, again, back to that idea of keeping track of yourself.
But not that I may have nothing.
Do you know in 1960s nobody thought about that hardly at all?
They didn't. I don't think they had to. It was all. There wasn't the way people my age feel about the 60s is that it wasn't like a higher income bracket that could afford to be at Lovin's and not at work.
No, people didn't cost as much, and people didn't think about it. They just didn't hardly think about it.
Didn't cost as much. Well,
nothing cost as much.
Didn't cost as much to live. People could have part-time jobs.
Well, that's just inflation.
I'll tell you, we did in 1969. We did what they used to call. It was a group of people, poets and artists and whatnot, and other kinds of things. And we bought a place, right? And it was 17 acres, and it was a 25-room hotel. And there was a house, a regular house with a furnace, and a couple swimming pools. There was a swimming pool and a couple tennis courts. It was in a meadow. It was in 17 acres at the end of a road. This was upstate New York. The deer would come in, 2 tennis courts, a swimming pool that worked, a badminton court, a flagpole.
The idea of owning land for some age is a false dream.
Let me tell you, we bought the house. We bought that 17 acres of land with a little meadow out in the forest like that, and it cost $25,000. You can buy it out of your pocket.
You can still do that in Montana, I think. I mean, there's some states, but you won't do in a city.
The thing is, you didn't have to worry about how you're going to earn a living.
I'm aware of this.
And there's so much concern now about materialism and how are you going to survive, and the pressures are put on.
I wouldn't say it's just materialism. I mean, I think a lot of the fears are pretty legitimate.
Well, I'm saying they're legitimate, but people have to
if I was faced with an even bigger threat, like being drafted, I would look at that too. I would probably look at that more importantly, because that would directly affect me within a year or so.
Well, how do you feel about the injustices that exist in the world? Let's say beyond your own thing on California State College or something, or the University of California, but Rwanda, or the kinds of Bosnia, or the kinds of injustices that do exist in the world, and the horrors that do exist in the world. Your dad used to put himself on the line very often, going down and like he was in Managua. We got a speech we're going to show when he was in Managua. How do the young people feel about the plight and the injustices that do exist in the world between the haves and the have-nots generally?
I can't speak for everyone, and I haven't discussed it with many people. So
speak for yourself, and then speak for your reading of the younger generation. If you could, just fill us in a little bit.
I have a little bit of disillusionment, like there's nothing I can do to help, so I concentrate on things that I think I can make a difference on.
I see.
Like I'd like to, I heard there was a law passed in the federal government that if you were to pump electricity back into the city electricity, that you'd be paid for it by PG&E, at least on the West Coast.
Yeah, if you could get a windmill going.
If you could get a windmill going. And I'd like to start working on projects that I can directly do. I think my skills are as an engineer, and I don't feel that I'm necessarily an organizer. I feel with a strong backing in science, and that's where I want to go forward. I'd like we each do what we're good at.
Yeah, so
So I concentrate on what I can do.
Right, okay.
And I try to keep informed.
Yes.
But I don't really believe in non-profit organizations that
much. You don't
much.
Believe in what?
I like the satisfaction of doing something which I directly feel that's good. If I see somebody who's...
Is there a bit of the entrepreneur in you?
What?
Is there a bit of the entrepreneur in you? Would you like to build a business?
No, I'm just saying that if I see somebody who's hurt, I'll bandage them.
Right.
And I like the feeling that gives me right there on the spot.
Right.
If I give it to a nonprofit organization, I feel like a lot of money is lost in bureaucracy, which I never see. And I don't know. And I don't believe in all these extra people that file papers and that sort of thing. I think that the aid should go directly to food or something like that.
I see. And you like to be directly tied into it?
Right. I'd rather donate labor or volunteer work than...
Your individual initiative. Is an individual initiative you'd like to be involved in hands-on and...
If it comes across, yeah. But I'm not actively pursuing that because I think that where I'm best suited is for engineering.
Right, okay. And do you think that's general among your generation? I mean, people are that way. They like to be directly involved with the thing and don't like to go
I think that's general with everybody. But
do you think it's true that they're just more interested in a pragmatic sense rather than an abstract? They have a harder time with abstract.
I find very few.
Justice and so
I'd say I don't find that many people that are that well informed, and I think that. Keeping people informed would be a really noble pursuit.
They're not informed about the world in general, right?
Right.
They know a lot, though. They're awfully
about
smart and they're awfully quick.
I'm not saying they're not intelligent.
Yeah. Do you think they're in future shock or overload or their information?
I'd say overload. Could attribute for that. Yeah.
Well, there's a fellow. Yeah. Go ahead.
I was just going to say it's just also a matter of focus. There's a lot of paranoia about even doing okay for the people that want to knuckle down and pursue education. That they'll even be able to get their jobs.
Yeah.
I don't know. Right. And then there's a lot of people, I think we're overwhelmed with psychology majors, business majors.
Yeah.
People that you only need a psychologist for every 30 or 40 people. I don't think.
And
yet everybody I meet in school is pursuing that.
They are? Right.
Yeah, which might be good. It's good to have a high vocabulary and pursue liberal arts.
Right,
but, I try and look for what
it's or you can have an effect on it directly. Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, things are moving quickly. Yes. Gregorian said the guy the amount of information available to us doubles every 5 years. You know, it's staggering because it goes off exponential. We're just being inundated with information and all this stuff, and the technology.
And time's speeding up too, as well. I think that time is actually speeding up.
Time is speeding up. Well, it probably, maybe in a sense, is the technological extensions of consciousness and that sort of thing, and everything. But it is. But there are some difficult times and challenging times and so forth, and you know, there's ecological challenges, and that's what you've been involved. You were involved in that for a long time with ecological things, weren't you? You and Abbie.
Well, literally.
Right? Maybe you could talk a little bit about when did you team up and that sort of thing, and talk about Abbie. This is supposed to be about Abbie because we're going to talk about his birthday party. I know, but his birthday party is here in New York City on the 30th of November at Wetlands, and we're going to let people know about that. But go ahead, talk about yourself.
Well, Abbie and I got together in 1974 in Mexico, and we were together 15 years until he died. And we had worked on, aside from the clips that you're going to see today, it was taking tours to see the revolution in Nicaragua in the first years that it was in operation. When we first started underground, we did lots of work together at different causes, but what really came to a head was in the St. Lawrence River, where I had brought him in 1976, which was a house my great-grandmother built. It's in the Thousand Islands.
Yeah.
And they have ships coming through from before the 50s, they were Lakers, and in the 50s they expanded this river to a seaway. It was supposed to be the eighth wonder of the world, and the Army Corps of Engineers at that time took out and blasted islands to make it wider and deeper for ocean-going ships to get to the Great Lakes. And people didn't fight it then. they became depressed and alcoholic, and they were promised they were going to have more jobs, there would be more ships stopping, and it wasn't true at all. And they brought in outside labor, blasted the ships, destroyed the fishing areas, destroyed people's homes, and so that U.S. Steel could get their ships into the Great, into the Great
They
Lakes,
dredged the bottom too.
And they haven't been. They dredged the bottom and they blasted the islands. You see whole islands floating down.
There was kelp that had grown all the way to the top from 200 foot underwater.
No sense of ecology.
That kelp doesn't just grow back,
Well, they had no sense at that time, right? And of course, the Seaway Development Corporation has never been in the black since they opened. So it's a ridiculous thing to destroy this. Actually, they were the largest rapids in the Northeast at that time. So what happened was they wanted to further destroy it and keep this open in the winter for something called winter navigation, and that meant blasting the ice that freezes 6 feet thick, so that these ships could come through. And of course, the ship would go through, and the ice would freeze immediately afterwards. Waves magnified under the ice ruined the shoreline. The ecological damage was enormous. But the most practical thing was economics. I don't want to say that people are selfish and they will only protect what affects them easier, but they sure can see the point easier if it's in their own backyard rather than abstractly and esoterically. And then that brings out when they also learn. And through organizing and through what Barry Fried, his name was at the time, taught us was that it not only can the organizing of different so we say different points of view, and definitely knows this is the North Country, this is God's country, and God is white and over 80 and Republican. And, and but that the things that affect these people can rally them together, and it opens their eyes. And when they see that they can use their inalienable rights, if you want, and affect a change in their own livelihood, then they get more encouraged, and then they see that other things can be done, and their eyes are open. In fact, I would maintain that Abbie's organizing as Barry Fried underground perhaps had more of a rippling and effect in the environmental movement around this winter navigation than perhaps the flash of the 60s conspiracy trial that we're going to celebrate the 25th anniversary of at this birthday party. Because now my next door neighbor is who was not an activist in the sense of the word, but is very much aware of oil spills under ice, for example, are impossible to clean up, and that you don't, and certain effects on their environment, the things they enjoy, the fishing, the swimming, the eating. So, and their grandchildren are now becoming environmental workers through college, because their neighbor was Barry Fried turned into Abbie Hoffman. So, and that ripples all over the area. In fact, every group that he has ever started, beginning with the first one that I know of, Prospect House in Worcester, Massachusetts, in his hometown in 1967, is still in existence. It's not as he began it. He's the spark plug that starts, that starts everybody going and teaches everybody, you can do it. And he believed in taking on something that you could win. But that group is now an institution, is still in existence, and in 1987 gave him an award for being the founder. His hometown, when he started out, of course, it was around civil rights, and then worked for blacks in the neighborhood of Worcester. So at that time, they weren't giving out awards, but 20 years later, he got it.
He did. Well, and
the same to Save the River that he started on our front lawn in 1978, when the Army Corps of Engineers announced they were coming to do a demonstration project to destroy this river.
Good for you all. So, that ecology thing was picked up, particularly in the 70s. And then the quarterly journals.
Now it's dangerous to be an ecologist. In Maine, people are fighting, and in the West, are fighting the timber. Their houses are getting burned.
Cars are being blown up.
And their cars are being blown up.
It's awful. It's awful. We need some.
They are perhaps the new frontier in terms of laying their lives on the line.
Right.
For something that they believe in.
Earth firsters and some of those people. Some of the Earth firsters and some of those people who are really trying to do that and see. It seems to me they're calling for for something, for an inclusive kind of sensibility to things and that kind of thing. And Abbie put himself on the line in so many different things, like you say, for civil rights, the war. There was that horrendous war in Vietnam that was being fought that just subverted everything. But he also put himself on the rights on the line for civil rights, as you say, and these other kinds of things. And he really
46 times.
46 was it? I thought it was 46 times he got put in jail for having put himself.
I heard 52.
It's usually pretty tough to go and take that first step. There's different kinds of people. A lot of people. He had one. He says you're either in the parade or you're watching the parade, and he was leading the parade in many places that were very often dangerous and so forth. And he was an inspiration to an awful lot of people, and ought to be an inspiration to the young people that are coming up, to the degree that they need it. It seems to me we all can use as much inspiration as we can get.
Well, he's not only inspiring, but he also left us with a certain bag of tricks.
Yeah, so we're right. That's right.
How to fight City Hall and beat it, and how to be, that is what, through the foundation with the young people I work with at Rutgers University, I have a intern every summer that comes and works on the files. And,
great.
It's not just the inspiration, there are actually tricks.
Right. Yeah, lessons. Right? Lessons, well, inspirational lessons.
Well, right? I say tricks because with him you have to realize there was a sense of humor in it. Tremendous sense of empathetic humor, but he was also dead serious. Well, he knew how to take a weak spot in his enemy and turn it around and make it funny and serve it up to him on a platter. There's no doubt about that.
There's so much, and we want to let people know about the fact that you're going to have this party in the 30s. We'll come up to that here in November. There's going to be this annual party. But we wanted to let them know a little bit about, we got some footage of Abbie, right? And just, people to view. We got a piece that you brought, of him down in Managua. He was giving a talk, and while it's relating to the Managua situation, it'll give people a feel for Abbie. It runs quite a little while, but he lays out a lot of his thinking. So maybe we could do that now, okay? And then we have another piece down the line that we're going to show of him talking to some little kids in a school. But that was really great. But this is Managua, Nicaragua. Bart Friedman, I think, is involved in the filming of it, and it's Abbie in Managua, 1985. So let's roll that tape now then. Okay.
With us this morning, Abbie Hoffman, who I'm sure you all know of. He's been an activist for 20 years, and he's now involved in the environmental movement. He'd like to say a few words this morning, too.
This is my second time here, and the reason that I speak this way is because when I spoke that way, they didn't listen. My voice is gone, so I'm going to speak a little softer. But first I want to say that we are not here to be rescued. We're not here because we've lost our passport. And because of the serious war crisis that occurred yesterday, the international lines were not available for civilian use to call the states. So it's important that I say hello to my mother and to my children, especially my daughter, who is in the hospital and unfortunately could not join us today to share the experience of being here in Nicaragua. I want to assure them not to worry, that the hospitality of the Nicaraguan people has been wonderful, that the food, the weather, and the beaches, and all the sights to see are truly magnificent, and that it's a marvel to see people in action striving for their freedom, for their justice, and for peace. I came with a group of 69 people, but I cannot speak using the words we. A favorite American philosopher of mine, Mark Twain, once said that only editors, kings, and folks who have tapeworms should be allowed to use the word we. So therefore, I can speak only for myself. I fought 10 long years against Vietnam to oppose U.S. policy there, and I plan, when I go back, to use all my energy, all my sweat, and all my blood for as long as it takes to prevent a U.S. invasion and a repeat of the disaster that was in Vietnam. The president of our country... The president of our country has said that Nicaragua is a totalitarian dungeon, that is a communist state, that is a place where the poor are oppressed, while the leaders live in opulence, where human rights are denied, where political opponents are tortured and killed, and that all this is the Russian plot to harm the United States. Ronald Reagan, of course, has never been to Nicaragua. George Shultz spent 4 hours in the airport. The Kissinger Commission spent 8 hours in this country, 4 of them with the opposition leaders. The Kissinger Commission met with no opposition leaders in the rest of Central America. Yet the government of the United States knows quite well what is happening in Nicaragua, but it is lying to the American people. They are lies that the government is telling to our people. They are whipping up false patriotism, and they are trying to convince America that the Nicaragua is exporting revolution, that is about to invade Honduras. According to Jane's Weekly in London, the U.S. government knew very well, way beforehand, that those Russian MiGs were headed for Libya and not here to Nicaragua. And why all this hysteria? Because if the U.S. cannot overthrow the Nicaraguan government by destabilization and terror, as they did a decade ago in Chile, then they will send young American boys to die on the beaches and the mountains and in the jungles of Nicaragua, indeed in all of Central America. People old enough to remember the history of Vietnam should not be relieved when Ronald Reagan goes on television and says there will be no invasion of Nicaragua. In 1964, Lyndon Johnson, once a week, told the American people that no American boys would die in an Asian war, and 700,000 Americans were sent the very next year. The U.S. never needed a Russian excuse to send troops to Nicaragua. They've been sending troops here since the early 1850s. In 1853, San Juan del Norte was leveled by the U.S. Marines because the U.S. ambassador was insulted. In 1856, U.S. interests tried to install, and did install, an American, a Tennessean, William Walker, to try and turn Nicaragua into a slave state. From 1895 to 1933, 17 times troops were sent here by the U.S. government against the liberal President Zelaya, and later to crush any independent movement, especially the revolutionary movement of Sandino. I will just read one quote by one of our presidents, William Howard Taft, that is not taught in the schools of our country. President William Howard Taft declared in 1912, and I quote, "The day is not far distant when 3 stars and stripes at 3 equidistant points will mark our territory, one at the North Pole, another at Panama Canal, and the third at the South Pole. The whole hemisphere will be ours in fact, as by virtue of our superiority of race, it is already ours morally," unquote. President William Howard Taft, 1912, long before the Russians had ever possibly dreamed of a revolution. Now, I come from Massachusetts. I was born 30 miles from the Concord Bridge, and I know the history of our country very well. I know that it did not spring from the forehead of God. I know that it came from revolution, that it came from a struggle against imperialism, against British imperialism. And I know that the British government accused our patriots of terrorism. It said that we were the puppets of France, who gave us arms and needed us to help create a French colony in the United States. I know the history of our struggle for democracy. At the beginning of our struggle for democracy, we burned the Tory press offices. Well, we drove the Tories, those that sympathized with the British, into exile, and we assassinated them. It took 12 years for us to elect our first president, and we knew very well who it was going to be. It was the hero of our American Revolution, George Washington. And it took years for us to work out our democracy. It was years before people who did not own property could vote. It was many, many more years for people who were women to vote, for people who were blacks to earn their right to vote. A democracy is not an easy thing to build. There was a long time of imposing censorship in our country and rationing foods and materials at all times of war, in the Civil War, in the First World War, and the Second World War. As a dissident against the war in Vietnam, I was repeatedly jailed. I was repeatedly beaten. I was beaten by thugs hired by the President of the United States, Richard Nixon, and H.R. Haldeman, and there are tapes to prove this. This has all been printed in the New York Times. Repeatedly, I was denied by name, legally, from entering states in the United States, from giving speeches. By law, I was spied on and burglarized by the government through the FBI. And this was not only my story, and it was not the only story that happened to activists fighting against the U.S. government policy. Many people who are even innocent, as you can speak to my running mate, Joanna, and hear her story of governmental abuse and denial of human rights. I believe Nicaragua is an open society. I believe it is a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. I believe in every sense that it is a democracy, and I believe in democracy with a passion. Censorship in Nicaragua, Ronald Reagan has never been to Latin America. Governments living in opulence off the blood of its people. Ronald Reagan has never been to Latin America. Suppression and censorship. Ronald Reagan has never been to Latin America. Suppression of the Indians, yes. The Sandinistas did make mistakes in the early years of the revolution, and they admit to those mistakes, and they have corrected those policies. And Brooklyn Rivera and all the indigenous peoples groups throughout Central America have said, as has said Kennedy, that they have changed their policy. But the United States is hardly the best country in the world to tell others how to treat Indians. What Ronald Reagan and the CIA fear is an open society here, a democracy, a government that attends to the health and social problems of its people. It does not fear a Russian colony. The U.S. government is the best public relations firm for a Russian colony. What it fears is movimiento de esperanza. That means a movement of hope. And I plan to go back and join with others here and in the States in solidarity, doing whatever is necessary to prevent the crushing of movimiento de esperanza, the movement of hope. I refuse to live in a world that does not have hope. Therefore, no quiero vive en el mundo sin Nicaragua libre. I do not care to live in a world without a free Nicaragua. Thank you. Russian colony.
Squeeze on them.
Okay, well then, and they were putting the squeeze on down there. Betty Friedan was there among the people that you were showing the revolution to?
Yeah, we had 69 people. Betty Friedan, some congressmen, some people from the New York Times, some writers, and Art DeLugoff, the Village Gate, and
God bless him.
Fantastic. It was a fantastic tour, and we were with the private sector, so we got to see both the Sandinista front and the private sector front. And this was at the beginning, before this blockade. It looked like this pluralistic society was going to work.
Yeah, right.
And it was very interesting to bounce back and forth among. We saw orphanages and churches, and all the way to what the private sector was doing. We had I ended up translating for Violeta Chamorro, who wasn't president yet at that time, but she was. She let us into her newsletter, La Prensa, that Reagan was, screaming about. But actually, it's about two-headed chickens that walk around and see statues cry and things. Yeah, but kind of paper.
You can see them there putting it out. Putting it out. I was putting it out, and then it was grand.
So these people got to see. These weren't the already converted. So these people got to see that things were a little tough, but the spirit and the heart of the young Nicaraguan people at that time. I mean, half the country was more than half the country was under the age of 25, and the chief of police of Managua was 28 years old, and the baseball was their favorite sport. And they loved American music and blue jeans, and most of the junta had been educated in the United States, and
I bet they loved Abbie.
And they loved Abbie.
Yeah,
and our
sure,
administration made some mistakes. Once again. In their decisions.
Right. And those things went on and everything. But the spirit there again, the spirit of calling truth to power and calling for justice, elemental justice, and that sort of thing. Right there, he was doing it all right there, and it was still there. And that inspiration and that tricks. Or learning is still there to be gained by all of us in a certain sense.
I guess.
And the world just goes on in a certain sense, and there's still tremendous challenges in that. We have another piece of tape we're going to show in a little while, but we have to talk about one of the main reasons we're here talking to you now is that it is Abbie's birthday on the 30th.
It's Abbie's birthday on November 30th, which is a Wednesday night.
Right.
And this year, and it's going to be at the Wetlands on Hudson Street, which is south of Canal in Manhattan.
Right.
And it's a $10 benefit for the archives to preserving his legacy and place in history, and in particular what we're working on now is the films and the videos and the Super 8s that are not temperature stored and should be properly taken care of.
Right, and also to encourage activism among people and to encourage activism in the spirit of
this year's inspiration every year seems to have a different theme.
Yeah.
This summer I saw Kurt Vonnegut on Channel 13.
Right.
And he came on to some panel, but his opening remark was, backstage, I was just saying how much I missed Abbie Hoffman.
Yeah, I saw Kunstler on the other day said the same thing.
And so I said, all right, this will be a reminiscing, and because it's the 25th anniversary of the Chicago conspiracy trial of 1968, we were going to have a celebration of that trial with the people that were able to come, that participated in that trial, both witnesses and lawyers and defendants.
Yeah.
And
I saw Billy. I saw William Kunstler on the other day talk about his new book. He's got a new book out, The Life of a Opposition Lawyer or something like that. And he said, radical lawyer. And he said Abbie was the only one who used to call him Billy. He'd call him on the phone, Billy, I got a problem, Billy, like that. Billy. I thought it was really great. You can just see him doing it. But it's going to be at Wetlands. Let's spell it. We'll put up the notice and that sort of thing. A couple notices we want people to know about. One is there's going to be a party the Wednesday the 30th at Wetlands, which is a really groovy place. I mean, it's ecologically minded, change-oriented place here in New York, which is worth supporting too. It's a good club. They do good stuff. There's going to be there, and you're going to have maybe Mr. Vonnegut will be there. Some of the people from the.
Yes.
Is Paul going to be able to Paul
Krasner is coming. Billy Kunstler is coming, and Jerry Lefcourt and Lenny Weinglass, the lawyers, and we have young people, Bubba Baruch and his rap group.
Bubba Baruch, right?
Bubba Baruch.
Abbie would love it. Abbie would love it.
No, okay. His Baruch Ben Israel.
Oh, right.
And we. I had heard him at Judith Malina and the Living Theater Seder.
God bless her.
They had a Seder, and these young ones performed. I had not heard them before. And they will be performing. And then we have Annie Addington, who is originally from the States, who's been living in Berlin, who is a soul singer, songwriter, a real diva from her heart, and sings about the black things in life. The sexual abuse she received as a child, to her loves, to her
Sounds great.
And plus we have DJ and we have talkers and party, and every year it's bigger and bigger.
Not to mention the audience. It was likely to be pretty interesting in and of themselves. All the people that are in there, that's just some of the usual suspects. There'll be all the others that'll be there.
Well, what happens is,
Peter Lorre will
the thing
probably
is that
come in.
This is not just a reminiscence of the 60s.
Yeah.
Because Abbie's life went on beyond the 60s in terms of his organizing and work and the people he influenced.
And particularly going into ecology. And the Wetlands is really into ecology, and you were in the environmental movement. The Millennial Horror Catalog is now out again, and that sort of thing, which is a help and that kind of thing. It's going. So that we want to let them know, and we also want to let them know about the foundation. We'll put that address up for the foundation to encourage all of these kind of things that are going on.
Absolutely. Right. What we have done, one of our projects over the last few years was in an inner city, Patterson. It's called Juvenile Education Awareness Project. Patterson, New Jersey, for teenagers, for feeding them lunch, for having them be able to a place to work. And this building was named after Abbie, and he went down for the dedication in '86, and it needs a new roof. So this summer we were helping raise money for the roof, aside from trying to raise money to keep Abbie's things together, and we will be publishing a newsletter eventually.
Keep Abbie's thing together. I keep stressing this. Keep Abbie's thing together, but also to keep alive the spirit of all of that. Behind it, it's not only Abbie himself, but it's also the spirit of all that he represented, because it was bigger than Abbie himself. But but he was right there, and we keep that in mind. That's a good lead-in, because we got another piece of tape with Abbie. We want to set it in because in 1989, right, he was living in a turkey coop, as he said to these children, and he was down in Pennsylvania in Bucks County, I guess, like that, and he met with these little kids in the fourth grade, I think they were, sixth grade or something, in the Buckminster School.
And they
quote. The reason I wrote this on the board is that I'm not the most famous Abbie in America. There's another one, Dear Abbie. Can people know that? She writes a lovelorn column for advice in newspapers. So you would be surprised that when I go to colleges and speak, especially out in the Midwest or in the South or further west, that about 20% of the audience expect a woman to show up, and they're quite surprised that I'm a guy. But I am. I know you're smart because you're going to get this question. Now, I live in a place called the Turkey Coop, not far from here. Two friends of mine from France went all across America and back to write a book about how America has changed since a very famous Frenchman did this about 100 years ago. And they went on bicycles, and they hitchhiked, and they took buses, and they took airplanes. And it took them 6 months to go all the way to the West Coast and come back. And there we sat in the Turkey Coop. And they said to me, "Abbie, little dot, even English. What do you think the most common question we were asked by all kinds of Americans going back or forth?" And I'll bet you get the answer. They were asked, what language do they speak in your country? Isn't that strange? Now, how many people know what language they speak in France? Isn't it amazing? You are smart. I knew you. What language? What language do they speak? But people were very puzzled, and they weren't sure what language they speak. Now it's time for your questions. Okay.
Do you think it's okay to break the law?
Oh,
Do you think it's okay to break the law?
oh, I've done that a few times. I've even tried to break the law of gravity, but nope, it didn't work again. I tried to do it. You know what the law of gravity is?
Yeah.
Who knows? Do you?
You know,
What's the law of gravity?
me?
Yeah.
If you go up, the gravity always pulls you down.
Yeah. What goes up comes down.
That's
Okay. Well, there are good laws and there are bad laws. I tried to break the bad laws, so then they'll become good laws. For example, at the beginning of the 60s, there was a law, there were laws in 13 states that said black people could not vote. Now, someone had to go and break the law and help other people break the law so that could change. Actually, our country, the United States, was founded by lawbreakers. Someone had to say to King George III, no. Someone had to just say no. Someone had to take some tea, where I come from in Massachusetts, in the harbor, off the ships and throw it in the harbor and say, boo, 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 we just broke the law. If they didn't break the law, there would have been no country. So there are good laws and there are bad laws to break, and the bad laws, someone has to break them. I'm the someone 53 times. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
We had just talked about William Penn, and what law did he break? Annie, what law did he break?
Well, he broke the law for not going to the King's church.
Right, that everybody had to be in the Church of England. He didn't want to be in the Church of England.
There's a perfect example of
You went to jail for, what was it, 60
what we're
days?
talking about. It's absolutely a perfect example. Then there are sort of informal laws. I have 3 children, you know. They're older, much older than you. I'm older than you think. How old do you think I am? How old do you think I am? Yes, just guess. 45. Now watch this blindfold. I will guess my age and come within 3 years. 50. 51, actually.
They have, who else has questions? I know they have tons of questions.
Okay. My youngest boy is 16. He has a very famous common Jewish name. His name is America. And he's a rebel, and he's been a rebel since he was very young. He defied laws so that when he was 13, so rock and roll could be played in the park. He fights curfew laws. He's now assistant editor of his school paper, and the Supreme Court said that they don't have the right to write what they want. He's defying it. He's a lawbreaker. He got kicked out of class last fall, and when we all gathered around Thanksgiving, we said, "Why did you get kicked out of class?" It was because the teacher had said America was a great melting pot. And so, speaking out of turn, he said, if it was a great melting pot, then the Indians must have been boiled alive. And the teacher said, naughty, naughty, get out of class. But his daddy and his mommy said, you were okay, you spoke the truth. You speak the truth sometimes, you're going to get thrown out of class, which means you're going to get called for breaking the law.
What is your favorite color?
Blue. It's the same as Elvis Presley and the same as Princess Di. And you would not believe it, but 12 reporters, journalists, have asked me that same question. Now, politically, I'm supposed to say green, because green represents the earth. You've heard of Greenpeace, the Green Party. Green represents the earth, but for some reason, blue.
Blue represents the ocean.
See, I have an answer for everything. But, life is the best game. Best game. I like all the games. Hi.
Do you know any famous celebrities?
Famous celebrities? Sure. But I'll tell you something. All the people that are good at being famous, that are doing something good, they hate the word celebrity. Celebrity is kind of fake. People try it. People who want to be celebrities are really empty-headed. They have no brains. It's almost like a person without a brain. It's a thing. No one would want to be a celebrity. I mean, you would have to be a jerk to want to be a celebrity. Famous is a different thing. I've been famous since I was 4 years old. I got famous because I was little, and in the schoolyard there was a bully picking on another little kid. And I said, what an opportunity. Now, if I get into this fight, and if I'm lucky with the bully, they're going to say, great, you were little and the bully was big. And if the bully beats me up, and I tried real hard, they're going to pick me up and say, you put up a good fight. So, you see, either way I had it made, and the bully was in the corner up the creek. And I'm still doing that. I still do that. So, of course, anyone that picks on bullies is going to become famous in their neighborhood. There are just and unjust wars. Now, of course, the opposite of war is what? Oh, yes, that was most famous. Of the 60s, I think, give peace a chance, right? However, there's different kinds of pieces. Let me put it to you this way. If you want to go drink water, and all the animals should have a chance to drink the water. The deers, the raccoons, the rabbits, the lions should all have a chance to drink the water. But if the lion gets wild and eats up all the other animals, there's going to be peace, because there's only going to be the lion drinking the water. It's going to be very peaceful. See? So there is a word that I like better than peace, and that word is justice. Justice. Well, you know how justice is spelled. I like justice.
Again, now we're back again. That was good. He's so beautiful with the kids. He really is. I'm going to put some nice little. He teaches them in a parable kind of way, some lessons and that kind of thing. And it's interesting in a certain sense to me, not just only metaphorically real, that he was in touch with the young people and trying to get the young people and inspire. He loved the young kids, right?
We had the whole 15 years we were together. We always had, when America wasn't with us during the summer, even when he was with us, we had some young person in their late teens, early 20s living with us. Yeah. He was constantly in touch. This is not an ageism problem here.
Yeah, right. And he was in touch in the film clip with these young kids that are in school and everything. But he was in touch. He was in touch with the young people of America. You remember he was in touch with the conscience of the young people. You remember him as he never got off into the crotchety kind of go away, leave me alone. He was always trying to relate to you and inspire the young people and liked kids. He liked the young consciousness.
There are a few people like that out there right now.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Tim Leary's a lot like that.
Is he?
Yeah, he's involved.
Yeah. And who are some of the people? We got just a couple minutes left.
I was just going to mention that my brother's going on trial December 2nd for the Chicago Needle Exchange.
What do you mean? He's going on trial for having done that?
Yeah, for distributing needles to heroin junkies to prevent AIDS, which is
good grief. That's a good thing to do.
Yeah, a lot of the people that he was in a holding cell were surprised that he was released on so much bail when their crimes were violent in nature. Right. His was $20,000 bail for an offense like that. So hopefully he'll win an appeal.
Abbie spoke about you in the film, if I may. He said, "America's my son." He said you were giving the school people trouble because you were protesting that they ought to be able to rock and roll in the school or something. You protested a little bit in your own right, and that kind of thing when you were.
Yeah, I was involved in the school papers. Most of the high schools I've been to.
Right.
So.
But anyway, he was just bigger than life. He was so great. We should just say in a certain sense, it's too bad we speak now in November. Jerry, his running mate, back in the old days, got an accident in California.
California.
How have you heard more? I mean, it's just occurred now. He had an automobile accident. It's a shame.
Condition, and we're all hoping for the very best.
Absolutely, because he was there, and they went different kind of ways afterward, in a certain sense, in terms of philosophy. But all of those people, and again, to underscore the fact that this anniversary on the 30th is to commemorate the 25th anniversary of the Chicago trial, and all of that, all of the activity that was taking place. That was a major event that was taking place.
Yeah, it was definitely a major event, and it was before America was born, and I was living in Europe at the time.
Right.
So we were all very anxious to see how these people are all get along together now, and what they feel. It's not just nostalgia. They all are continuing working activists in their right, and there will be celebrating that. But going forward, I also have. Several young people have written about Abbie and his work, and I want to tell people about that and how they're influencing their papers that they do and the students that they work with.
Right. Well, we want to do that. Well, we want to be able to. This time, was it Dickens or was it? These are the best and worst of times in a certain sense. In a sense, it was then.
Abbie paraphrased it. These are the worst of times. These are the worst of times.
These are the worst of times. These are the worst of times. Well, in a certain sense, it's still there, and in whatever the time is, it's always good to be able to look, as you say, laugh at it in a certain sense, use satire, turn it on its side, and use whatever weapons we have to try
you got to use whatever you can,
And we have to run it out. We'll run right out of time, but listen, it's been your pleasure to have the perceptions. America Hoffman, son of Abbie Hoffman on the left, Joanna Lawrenson, wife and running mate of Abbie. Happy to bring you those perceptions. Tuning in next week. Go to the party on the 30th of November. That's it for this program once again. Thank you both very, very much for coming.